outreach. I am a part of several different programs, and I myself was homeless when I was 17, took my sister with me. We fled to the streets, lived out there for about 5 months until we finally got a car to live in, which was our first home, as we called it, for another 2 months, and then finally was taken in when our father returned home from prison. So, which sounds kind of tragic, but that was a blessing for us. Needless to say, because of the time that I and my sister spent on the street, I have since that time been working on trying to eradicate homelessness, especially for young girls, because I do know what we ourselves had to endure. We are part of a program that is an offshoot of In the Life St. Louis, and we do homelessness outreach there. We provide dinners during the holiday season. We give out clothes and shoes and socks and gloves by the dozens and hundreds every year. And then as well, I also am a founder of an organization called Weekend Angels, and we provide free events and clothing and tutoring and shadowing at schools for youth who come from very dangerous backgrounds. Many of them are homeless. A lot of them come from what is known as BD schools, which are behavior disorder schools. So we do that as well. And I live in Centralia, Illinois, but do an awful lot of work in St. Louis. So I'm always trying to encourage people who live in St. Louis to do the same. I'm like, if I can drive 2 hours, surely you can drive 5 minutes to come out to do the same. So you can look up on Facebook either In the Life St. Louis, which is INTHELYFE St. Louis, or Weekend Angels, which is just like it sounds, and see what more we do out there. As Asia said, we are participating in an anthology. This is a piece that I wrote based upon a conversation I had with one of the women that we did outreach with. So, so often people think that you're homeless as a woman simply because you're a drug addict or a prostitute. But for many women, such as myself at one time, it is most definitely a choice. This is the piece called The Freedom to Scream. It takes 1,483 steps to reach the tunnels from this corner, and another 17 steps further to get down to what we call the basin. That is only 7 blocks, but when it's 3 below zero and the wind is fighting you for a position on the sidewalk, you must focus your mind away from the pains of freezing. I can tell you the number of steps it takes to get to the tunnels from most any corner downtown. I know how many seconds each stoplight takes to change and can count on one hand the number of times I've heard someone say my name the last time in the past 6 years. When I was a young girl, my grandmother, my dear, used to call my name so many times a day, I prayed she would forget it and just leave me alone. Seems the reach of that prayer was further than her, because I've been on my own now for as long as I can remember. But I'll admit, I do prefer it this way. People I encounter at shelters and on the street always look at me like I'm too young to be out here like this, wrongfully assuming I must be an addict or mistakenly think selling my body is the business I'm in. But no one can comprehend why a sane woman sleeps on hardback benches, or why I run to the muddy trenches of the basin when it's pouring like God is attempting to wash away the grunge of these secrets I've hidden for decades. Guess they assume anyone who doesn't try to attain refuge from the elements, who doesn't aspire to live in an apartment with a husband and some kids, must be crazy. And perhaps they are correct in their thinking. Nights when the past bubbles up black and thick in my nightmares, which appear outside the realm of sleep, I'd probably agree I'm well distanced from reality these days. Onlookers must mistake my locks hanging over my face for branches of a willow tree, or confuse me for just some abstract painting just here for the visual pleasure, openly staring. Sometimes I slowly raise my eyes to meet their gaze, like this crazed loon I saw once in a horror movie. I laugh openly then at their idiocy, and that is even more alarming to my drive-by audience. Seems to me like a woman on the street with no weapons in hand would not scare them, but perhaps it is just frightening to see the ghost of who they could have also been. I'm no different from anyone else, no less intelligent, had much the same educational background, but since I never once have found a place of refuge nor of peace, I took off when life collapsed on top of me. I've been on a journey of leaving myself behind ever since. The ill-informed often are surprised not all homeless are men, not realizing there are just as many women and children out here on these streets. My friend Joe, who wound up here from Cincinnati, has been passing as a man for years. She made me swear by tapping the lid twice on a can of beer that I would never tell anyone what she hid under her clothes. Little did she know what I was holding in myself for years. I hide as much as she. We just disguise ourselves differently. I wear a mask of grime to hide my beauty, layer on clothing to cloak my femininity, been binding my own breast to my chest for 4 years just like Joe, so men don't know what they're missing. Shrouding my reasoning for living amongst dope fiends and rat infestation, I live daily in this costume of voiceless mutation from the girl I once was. A good Samaritan decided to take me in a few nights ago, thought she would show me how beautiful my skin was after a good cleansing. The shock of seeing my nakedness through the layers of dirty water made my suppressed nightmares resurface. From the recess in my small frame, demons came shrieking up towards my lips, but I stopped myself just before screaming. She dressed me like I was just some paper doll, telling me all I needed was someone to love me like a mother. But since mine left me behind when I was just 3, I could only conjure up images of leaving. People keep forgetting that just because I made the conscious choice to divorce myself from my voice, that I still do have an opinion. Ignorant rhetoric has the haves believing beggars cannot be choosers, so they toss out scraps to perceive grateful losers to rid themselves of their guilt of possession. Yet they fail to realize not all homeless people are just begging to be saved. I left her house that day and went back to the tunnels amongst those who are now my chosen family. But once they discovered what I'd been disguising for years, they saw me differently. Men who had been feeding and protecting me for years started pawing at me like all the others had done since I first began to blossom. These curves, dips, and crevices I possess have always been a curse. And once again, those I thought were friends morphed into rabid savages I hardly knew at all. 17 steps up the stairs from the basin. 1,483 steps from the tunnels to the corner where I'm standing, breaths painfully ripping their way into my lungs after running yet again. I run so often, it's the only thing that has ever come easily for me. But where might a woman go when the final safe place she's known ceases now to exist? How does one go about leaving behind their own gender when any semblances of femininity only have ever provided for me one more reason for not speaking? Why can no one see me standing here on this corner,
and think of me not as just some abstract thing to toss a hateful glance towards, or a quarter, or some little penance thing that matters not to them, when all I need is compassion and eyes and voices to speak for me when I no longer have anything to say that anyone seems to care of. But I'd rather just find a safe place now to hide. But perhaps now, since I can find no compassionate eyes, no place left to go, perhaps now it's finally time that I free the demons within that have taunted me, and finally permit myself the freedom to scream out loud.